3 Scary Stories from Reddit. So this story happened about 11 years ago. I was a senior in high school at the time, but this is the single most mind-boggling thing that I've ever experienced. It's also important to note that this happened in mid-December. I am from Iowa, and the winters here get cold at night. Like, if you get stuck outside, you will die kind of cold. That, plus the snowfall, makes everything here dead silent. You can hear anything and everything immediately inside the house and even immediately out of it. Well, me and my best friend were hanging out in my family's walkout basement, just having a boring winter night playing video games. We were also the only ones home. The reason it was just us is because my mother went from work straight to a bar to grab a few drinks with her coworkers. So me and my friend thought it would be a good idea to break into the family's wine and live a little. As we were sitting there opening up the first bottle, I immediately heard the door to the garage open and slam shut. I immediately go, "Oh shit," and start looking for places to hide the bottle. My friend then says, "I thought you said your mom was supposed to be out all night." "She was," I replied. I then heard a few heavy stomps and heard my mother yell out, "Meow-zaboo, anyone home?" I yelled back up the stairs, "Yup, just hanging out in the basement." I hear a few more steps move from the garage door toward the stairs, and she yells out again, "Can you come help me with something? I need you up here." I reply back while frantically trying to find a place to hide the wine bottle, "Yup, just give me a minute." Then there was silence for about 20 seconds. "Anyone down there with you?" she yelled back in a more concerned, serious tone, in a voice that was slightly off of my mother's. This was the first thing that told me something wasn't right. Our family never cared if anyone was over, as our house was a very open home to all friends and family, and the voice, it was just wrong. It sounded like my mother's, but it was missing something I couldn't put my finger on. Weirded out, I replied back, "Just Colton." After I yelled that back to her, I found a good place to hide the bottle and began walking up the steps to the next level. Now, as I was walking up the steps, I couldn't help but feel the overbearing silence of the house, and the slight electric twinge that something isn't right. When I got to the top of the steps, I looked over to where the door to the garage is, and also the kitchen right next to it, and it was black, pitch black. All of the lights were off, and there was no moonlight shining through any windows. I walked over to the kitchen, yelling out, "Mom, where are you?" But there was no reply, just silence and darkness. I felt the electric twinge turn to full needles, my adrenaline kicking into full force. I have to get out of here as fast as possible. My mother was not home. I ran back down the stairs, grabbing my coat along the way. "What's wrong?" Colton says. "My mom's not home," I reply as fast as I can, looking for my truck keys. "What do you mean? You were just talking with her." I could see the confusion in his face. "There's no one home. We need to leave. Now." I took a few steps towards the back door that opens up to the yard, and I see my dog shaking on the couch and my cat growling behind it. I couldn't leave them. I just knew that if we left, something would happen. "Are we leaving?" Colton says, still confused. "No, I can't leave them here alone. Something is really off. I'm going to call my mom and figure this out." I pulled out my phone and called my mom. She picks up immediately. "Meow-zaboo, what's going on?" she answers. "Mom, are you just home? I heard you yelling for me from the second level, and I went up and you weren't there," I said frantically, hoping that she was just playing a joke. "No, I'm just leaving the bar. I wasn't feeling very well. Are you okay? What do you mean you heard me?" I fill her in on this whole story, and she rushes home. Colton and I stayed in the basement with the animals until she got home. But before she did, you could hear something upstairs. Not walking or sitting on things, but a pressure in the air, like a black hole was slowly moving from one room to the next. And the word that I would instinctively describe it as is hungry. When she got home, you could feel the thing leave just as quick as it came, like an overbearing predatory presence that had just flown away. We still have never figured out what the hell was going on, and this is just one of many unexplainable things that have happened to us. This is the easiest to write down, and the one I was most happy to have a witness. My mother has passed away now, and I have moved away to Arizona, but whenever I go back to Iowa and I see Colton, he still gets creeped out by what had happened. I'll never truly know what happened. I know that whatever it was, it had my mother's voice, and it was evil, and it was hungry. This is probably the creepiest, most unexplainable thing that has ever happened to me. I used to work overnight as a security guard at a local port. Usually none of the port workers would stay overnight except for the safety official. I wouldn't be on shift alone since the site had a radius of nearly 2 miles. Overnight, usually there would be 3 guards, including me. Since the area was fairly big, there were different posts, but front gate was the main entrance area where all the guards would be sanctioned overnight. Since there was no need to put them in other posts, due to the fact that there's no activity in the site at this time, the veteran guards that had been there for years would often say that the sites were haunted. Given the fact that there had been accidents and deaths that occurred in the area a long time ago, I was aware that people died here due to freak accidents, and I do believe in angels and demons since I'm actually a religious person. But I always thought it was just superiors messing with the new guys. I would work 5 to 6 nights out of the week, and for the first few weeks I never really saw or heard anything out of the ordinary, except for a few questionable creaks and maybe a few misplaced objects while doing my patrol rounds, but nothing too crazy. Just to describe the setting to you, this is a fairly big site. and on occasions there would be big projects being constructed at the port. The workers would sometimes stay overnight due to the fact that there were times where the port workers were required to stay at the port for a few days. There's the gym and the site for their convenience. This gym is fairly old. In the gym, there's a sauna, weights, and even a racquetball court. If you don't know what a racquetball court is, it's similar to an indoor tennis court, with thin plastic walls and thick glass doors. Usually on our patrol rounds, me and one of the other guards, Mike, would stop by the gym and play a few rounds of racquetball before returning to the front gate. On one of those nights, me and Mike decided to hit a full workout instead of playing racquetball. This is around 2:30 a.m., and the entire building is so quiet that you can hear the electricity through the lights. The air conditioner is off, and so is everything else. The only thing that's running are the lights. 15 to 20 minutes into the workout, we hear a loud thump. We cross it off as nothing and continued working out. Then, a few more minutes, we heard a loud once more. At first, we thought it was our lieutenant who could have been walking around. Then we radioed him and he gave us his location, which was front gate. We tried thinking logically on what could be making those thumps on the wall. They were coming from the other side of the court. We thought it was the air conditioner, but then we remembered that it was off. And even when it's switched on during the day, there's no reports of thumps coming from the air conditioner. After a few more minutes, the thumps started occurring, one right after another. But what we're about to witness still scares the absolute out of me today. We started to approach the other side of the gym where the glass door was. We turned on the flashlight aimed towards the clear glass door. And I got chills all over my body, and I started tearing up so much out of fear that I was about to cry. We saw one of the balls rolling itself slowly inside the court, and there was no one in there. So that means loud thumps, where the balls mysteriously being tossed against the wall, as if someone or something was playing inside the cage. We were both so confused and frightened at how this was really happening. We couldn't make any sense of it. We were scared, and we started yelling and running away because we knew that there was probably something evil toying with us right there. As we sprinted full speed back to the front gate, the lieutenant saw us and asked why we were tearing and running in a ridiculous manner. We told him what we witnessed, and his facial expression scared us even more. He said, "There's something evil in the area, and it's not the first time that something bad has happened here." He then shows us security footage of dark figures and shadows literally passing through the office area and lights, mysteriously switching on and off. To this day, I still get chills recounting my experience with my friends and family, and I'm even getting chills right now as I'm typing this. I'd never really had an encounter with the supernatural until that night. Many say it was a demonic presence messing around. Others say it was the ghost of a dead person who died in the area. I don't know what it was, but I didn't last long in that job after that. There were other experiences, but I might post them later. I was living in a rural area in Oklahoma with my mother at a small lake house, and I'm probably 10 to 11 at this time. One night I'm sleeping in my room and I randomly wake up for no reason. This was not normal for me and I felt very uneasy. The only sound I could hear was my mother snoring in the next room on the couch. I rolled over and tried to go back to sleep, but my need to use the bathroom was growing more urgent, so I begrudgingly forced myself to head that way. The bathroom was on the other side of the house, around a corner and past the kitchen, and finally down a long hallway on the right. So after I made the trip and finished my business, I flipped off the light switch and started heading back to bed. That's when I heard the distinctive click sound of the light switch, and I saw the glow of the bathroom light in the hallway. Terrified, I slowly turned around just to witness the light in the bathroom clicking on and off. Click, 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 click. Finally, it shut off completely. In the dark of the hallway, my eyes began to make out a white shape near the end of the hall. It was around my size and crouched down into the floor. At this point, I'm frozen to the spot as my mind begins to realize that no one else is home except for my mom and myself. Then, the white shape begins whispering in a quiet man's voice. "Help me, I'm lost." I remember wanting to scream for my mom, but I couldn't, and instead, I barely said, "No," before this thing starts running at me on what sounds like all fours. I quickly ran through the kitchen and around the corner before running to my sleeping mother, shaking her awake. I remember saying, "It's coming, it's coming," and my mother's eyes going from dazed to alert in an instant. She asked me what was going on, and I saw her eyes look over my shoulder before she screamed. Remembering her scream still makes my blood run cold. Never had I heard a pure terror scream like that in my life, even to this day. She grabs me by the arm and pulls me into the room and slams the door. She holds me in her arms with her back pressed against the door as we listen. It sounded like this thing was running around in circles in the kitchen. We could hear hands and feet slapping against the tile. The kitchen had a sliding glass door to the outside, which sounded like it was thrown open and slammed. We sat there, horrified, until daybreak. I was sent to my grandmother's in the next town for a while. After that, I never set foot in that house again. Years later, my mother said she went walking around the property after the incident and she came across a small burial site with 3 headstones that each belonged to a children from the early 1900s. It freaks me out because what I heard that night was a man's voice, but it was so unnatural. My mom still will not tell me what she saw behind me and what it was that made her scream. She tells me she's afraid it will know we're talking about it and will come back. This is the first of many weird things that have happened in my life.